Hi everyone, my name's Spencer and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be showing you how I set up my bullet journal pages for September. I really struggle when it comes to coming up with themes as we go into autumn because I don't do great mentally with these seasons, so I wanted to make sure that I had a theme that was, relevant to the seasons, but was still bright and colourful enough to keep me happy and bring me joy when I look at the pages. So after having a conversation with my father-in-law about what autumn meant to him, we came up with the idea to do root vegetables, with a side helping of bread and stew. And to keep up the cosy, colourful vibes, I decided to try and do an art style similar to that seen in Studio Ghibli. It's been a while since I did a Studio Ghibli theme, and although it's not inspired by a film, it's nice to return to something I've been doing since the beginning of my channel. Supplies-wise, I'm keeping it quite simple, for me at least. I have these cute sticky notes that are bread and bear themed, and a range of stickers that match the colour scheme. And, just the general vibe of this setup, including some that have comforting quotes on them, which I think are perfect for a snuggie setup. I also have some plain and patterned washi tapes in the same colours for this setup, and pens to go with each of those. The pens again are a mix of Crayola Super Tips, and the brush tip pens are from Hobbycraft. I'm going to be using very fine tip liners from Derwent for pretty much all the black line work and shading that I'll be doing for this setup. For my cover page, I drew a bunch of different root vegetables that could go into a stew. We have some carrots, a bulb of garlic, broccoli, which actually I'm not sure if it is a root vegetable, but the colour works with the scheme, and broccoli goes into quite a lot of stews, and I needed a completely green veggie to kind of balance the colours of this setup. We also have some ginger, a turnip, some potatoes, and a green onion. We also have what was originally supposed to be beets in the top left, but for some reason when I coloured them like radishes, so please enjoy how this looks rather than looking for any realism here. To fill the space in the middle, I decided to draw a chopping board with some chopped carrot on it. When drawing these, I used my 0.05mm Derwent fineliner to create some sketchy lines and also to do some shading, kind of like in a crosshatch way but with the lines just going in one direction. And I also used it to do some fine lines to add some definition. I also decided to let my shaky hands do their thing, especially for the leaves of the carrots, instead of trying to be really careful and get the lines perfect. A lot of you probably know, but I have several disabilities, and one of them means that I get really shaky hands or weak hands, which is why it takes me a little longer than other creators sometimes to do a setup. But this month I decided to embrace the shake, and I think it really worked for this style, and for some of the elements in the setup. And actually it was quite a lot of fun too, it was quite nice to just let it happen rather than be thinking really carefully about how I was controlling my hands. For the quote page, of course I had to go with a punny quote, so I went for "I'm rooting for you" as a little note from my past self to future Spencer when they look back at this page. I outlined everything using that 0.05 Derwent fineliner again, and I really like the look of the thinner outlines for both the headings and the drawings. There's something about using a thin outline that makes them look light and airy, which I really like for this theme, keeping things bright and light, so that I don't feel like I'm going into a dark and depressing season. I also think it helps with the Studio Ghibli vibes to have this lighter line work than the kind of heavier lines that I sometimes do with different setups if it works for that theme. For the quote, I offset the words on each line, and then in the spaces between the words, I used the fine liner to draw some ground and drew some leaves above that with a little trowel next to it for a cozy gardening feel. And in between the words for and you, I drew another line to represent ground, and then drew the below ground view, if that makes sense. So you can see the turnip under the ground. Colouring in these veggies, I really wanted to have gradients and soft blending, rather than solid blocks of colours. So I worked really hard on starting with light colours and then spent time building up the colour gradually. I also used this very pale light yellow to help blend the colours without using white, because pure white doesn't really exist in nature, so I thought using this slightly off-white would be better. It was very much a trust the process kind of situation, but I'm so happy with how everything turned out. It came out better than I expected, actually. And this was quite a new technique for me as well. Normally I tend to do I'm not sure how to describe it. I don't usually do soft blending. I usually have like, here's the colour, here's the shade of that colour, like, or the shadow of this piece on there, if that makes any sense. I don't think it does. And a lot of the time I actually just do flat colour, so it was a lot of fun to experiment with layering colours and trying to give the veggies like a round feel to them. Of course, because I'm me, I decided that the quote page needed some extra zhuzhing, so I added some washi tape. I experimented with the combinations of patterned and planed washi tapes until I found one I like, eventually going for the brown grid tape layered with the lighter tan tape at the bottom, and then just a little bit of that lighter tan tape at the top. I also decided that I would keep the rough edges of the washi tape this time. Sometimes I use a ruler and create a really straight edge as I tear the washi tape, but this time I thought having the raw edges went with the theme a little better, this kind of like rough and ready home gardening feel. The next page I'm setting up is my notes or brain dump pages. I started by drawing another, what was supposed to be a beet turned radish, and coloured that in the same way I did on the previous page. So starting with that kind of pinky red and then blending that down into the pale yellow at the bottom. Because this drawing is so much smaller, there wasn't a huge amount of space to blend the colours or to add too much definition. So for the leaves, they're more one colour than like properly shaded like on the previous page. And I'm now only noticing whilst editing this that I didn't actually outline the notes title on this page. Oops. So normally I would outline the title using that thin liner again, 0.05, and then colour it in using whatever colour I chose. Obviously, I missed doing the line work this time, so we're skipping straight to the colour, which I used this olivey green colour for. Then I moved on to outlining the stew bowl and the breadboard on the other page. I coloured in the bowl using a darker red colour, and then used this dark purple that I'd previously used on the turnip to add shading to the bowl, which I did using the fine tip. So I created a little ridge so you could see like the lip of the bowl and a little bit of shadow on the right hand side. I then coloured in the little pops of veggies in the stew, which are just little lumps really, and I focused on using orange and green because those stood out the most from the stew colour that I did. Colouring the bread was a lot more difficult than I anticipated, but I think that by not colouring in the bread solidly meant that it didn't blend with the breadboard that the bread was on, if that makes sense. I kind of wish I used a lighter brown for the breadboard just so that there was more of a contrast, but I do think this kind of half filled in look does help keep the definition between them. I then coloured the blanket below it, and this one was a little bit of a mind bender, but I think I got there in the end. I used that same colour from the radishes for the broad strokes, and then that more purple one that I used for the shadow on the bowl to create the fine strokes, which ultimately helped create this tartan-like pattern. Now, I know I've done a tartan theme before, and actually I had a lot of fun with it. It was based on a specific tartan, This one is not. This is just a general kind of tartan-like pattern with thick bands of colour and thinner bands of contrasting colour. Again, I think that by breaking up the colour and making this a pattern helped to not overload all the colours on the page, because there was still some like white space, if you will, on there. I then added a combination of the brown grid washi tape and then a strip of this thin washi tape in like a dark pink that's a really close match for the colours that I used on this page. So I experimented with the layering again, which is always a process. Like, it looks really quick here when, you know, it's all sped up and such, and I've cut out some of me faffing around and pausing and looking at it and then taking it off and putting it back kind of thing. But it does still take me a little while to figure out exactly where I want stuff and what combination of ephemera I want to use. So please don't be discouraged if you are just now starting to use things like washi tape and stickers and you're not sure of the best way to layer them or put them on the page. It just takes time and practice. I promise. Like, I don't know anyone who actually immediately goes, right, it's going here, and then that's the, like, they put it there and that's the final say, you know? Like, it's okay to experiment and change things. So after I put down those washi tapes, I decided that I wanted something else to add to this spread a little bit. So I added this quote box from one of the sticker sheets I have. They come in like a little booklet, and then you can pull the page out and then cut around the bit you want, which I really like. I think it's a really cool way to kind of add in different ephemera without having to buy all of it, if that makes sense. And I think I got this particular booklet from Stationery Pal. This quote reads, "No more waiting to become. It's simply time to be." I have no idea where this quote is from, but it feels like it matches the theme really well. And just that reminder that, you know, as we go into these months that I usually struggle with a bit, it's okay to not be like fully on the go all the time. It's okay to just sit back and be. And I do apologize, the focus keeps going a bit off in this video. I'm really sorry about that. I will do better to check my autofocus in the future. I just kind of got in the zone with this one, so I wasn't checking my phone too much as I was filming. So for the final bit of decoration on this page, I decided that I wanted to add some more colour to the notes page. So I used that really pale yellow that I've been using to blend to highlight every other line. This just helps make the page more interesting to me, and I've learned over the years as I've been bullet journaling that the more interesting a page is to me visually, the more likely I am to return and use it. So, on to my next page. For this page, I am setting up my calendar spread. I like to set this up after my brain dump because I tend to use my notes page first and work out everything I need to do, that I'm working on, or the events that are happening, and just like get that out of my brain all on a page, and then I can flip back to that as I plan out my month. I started by writing the title. I don't often do this for my calendar pages, and I prefer to just have like drawings or decoration in a different way. But I had a lot of space this month because September starts on a Friday, so I decided I would use that space to put a header in. I once again used that 0.05 nibbed fine liner to write out the headings and do the line work for the calendar and all the line work for all the veggies and gardening tools at the bottom of the page. For the calendar itself, each box is 6 by 6 dot squares, because I feel like this gives me the perfect amount of room to write in events and tasks sometimes if there's a deadline or something that I just really need to get done. So yeah, I like this size for my calendar, and I haven't had any trouble finding ways to fit a whole month in when using this slightly bigger. I also used that thin liner to create the daily headings for each day of the month as well. Again, I don't always do this because my weeks start and end on the same day. I am a Monday to Sunday kind of person, so it's very easy for me to figure out what day is what in my calendar. But again, I just wanted to have some extra details on this page. In the space at the bottom of the page, I drew a series of veggies and gardening tools. So I started with another beet cross radish, a trowel, some broccoli, a fork trowel. I don't know if this has a proper name, I'm just going to call it a forked trowel, a carrot, and then a chopping board with some potatoes sliced on it. I then also drew a sack of potatoes with the infamous quote, "Potatoes, boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew." I again used that really fine liner to add shading to the drawings before going in with the colour again. I used a dark sage green to colour in the title, as this wasn't a colour I'd really used on any of the veggies except a little bit of shading on the broccoli. I then used that dark pink colour again to colour in each letter headings for the days of the week. I also used that same colour to colour the top right hand corner of each box, which is where I will write the dates. I did consider adding some stickers or washi tape to this page, but ultimately decided against it as I thought the page was filled enough already. After finishing my calendar page, I moved on to my tracker page. This page really doesn't change much month to month, but I do sometimes change the things that I am tracking. But it's always in this kind of table checkbox format. I outlined the title before writing out all the numbers for my table tracker, and then I moved on to writing out all the things I'm tracking this month. These include my pain and fatigue as normal, which I just do on a 1 to 3 scale. If I need more details, they'll be in the daily pages, basically. And then under my pain and fatigue, I track some habits like taking my meds, what time I get up, if I'm hydrating well, eating 3 meals, going to my studio, tidying, journaling, all of those little things. These aren't things that I'm like, okay, I need to do every single thing every single day. They're just things that I want to try and do, even if it is just once a month. Just having it on here reminds me that I want to do it, and it helps keep me accountable if I need that. Otherwise, it's just for looking back and referencing and seeing, oh, I had a higher pain day here. Was that affected by any of the habits I did? Was it helped? Or was it made worse? Or, it's also really good for tracking how my mental health is doing. So, because there's a lot of self-care tasks on here as well. So after outlining that table, I moved on to colouring this page. In previous setups, I've really enjoyed having almost the whole background coloured or patterned, like in my July Red Panda setup, which is honestly still one of my favourite setups I've ever done, where I added the bamboo background. So I tried to do something similar here with that blanket element we had on my brain dump page. However, it didn't really work out. I really couldn't figure out if I liked how it was going or not, so I paused to have a sandwich and take a breather. After my snack, I decided to finish my original plan because I wasn't going to know how I fully felt about it until it was done. Unfortunately, I did forget to switch to the dark purple fine liner to do the narrow strokes. That kind of sealed the fate of whether or not this blanket design would work. I did then try going back in with that darker purple pen, but it just made things look worse, I think. So in the end, I decided I would just use some spare paper and cover this page. I grabbed this dot grid journal that has perforated pages and took out 2 pages to use to cover up the blanket mistake on this spread. It took a little bit of trial and error to get the pages to lay in the way that fully covered the mistake, mostly because I drew over the very middle of this spread, and these perforated pages are slightly smaller than the average A5 dot sheet. So I had to get an extra sheet out, and instead of trying to lay the pages over my journal vertically, I turned them horizontally so I had more space to work with, and then lined up the curved corners. I then sketched where my tracker table was and cut that out of the page so that it wasn't covered up, because I was not going to be redrawing all of that. I then used glue tape to stick the new dot grid pages over the previous ones. Obviously, this isn't the most seamless cover-up, but it's good enough for me. To blend the edges of the paper that I stuck down, I decorated the pages with washi tape and those bread-themed sticky notes I showed you at the beginning. I experimented with placement and combinations, and decided that I should also add some drawings to this page to liven it up a little bit and tie it back to previous pages. I added broccoli and slices of carrot to the right-hand side, and I also drew a carrot buried in the ground just above that grid sticky note. On the other side of the page, where the edge is lower on the cover-up, I drew a mound of dirt with a trowel sticking out of it, and then placed a light brown washi tape right along the edge of that join, rather than covering it, because I think that actually helped distract from that join, whereas laying this tape, which is slightly translucent, over it would actually highlight that ridge. I then added another one of those motivational stickers to finish this space off. This one reads, "Being a nice person means being nice to yourself as well." And honestly, this is just such a good reminder for me, because I'm often a lot harder on myself and less forgiving of myself than I am to other people. It's also a good reminder to have on a tracker page, as it reminds me that this is just to track what I am doing and not a tool to use to beat myself up if I don't complete everything every day. Also, the sticker was just the perfect size for this space. After adding a little bit of extra colour to the page, it's finally happy enough with it to call it done. We're now moving on to my last spread of this setup, which is my weekly spread. I'm doing the same type of layout that I did last month, so having calendar boxes on the left-hand page and then a notes page on the right-hand page. And these notes sections can go on for however many pages it needs to. However, because I like my weeklies to start on the first day of the month, this sometimes means that my first week might have more boxes or less than the usual 7. September started on a Friday this year, so that means that this page could potentially only have 3 boxes. But because this is a busy week for me and an uploading week, I like to have everything where I can see it, so I decided to run this weekly from Friday the 1st to Sunday the 10th, making the boxes for the 9th and 10th slightly smaller because I don't have anything really planned on those days. Each of the regular boxes are 8 dots across and 9 dots down, with the exception of the 9th and 10th, which are 8 boxes across but only 4 dots down. I decorated this page by drawing some broccoli in the top left corner and another beet turned radish in the right hand corner. I also kept the heading hollow and then coloured it in this bright yellow-orange colour that I've been using throughout the setup. On the notes page, I did the heading in the same style and then coloured it in with the olive green colour. I also drew another trowel digging into the dirt next to the title. And on the bottom right, I also drew another stew bowl and coloured it in the same way as before. I also added a bread sticky note layered over it to tie in all the different elements that I've used throughout these spreads. And I just use my glue tape runner again to stick those sticky notes in. Again, I used that really fine tip nib to do all of the outlines for the headings and drawings on this page, but I used a slightly thicker one to do the boxes and daily headings in each of the boxes, just so they stood out a little bit more. And now here is the final flip through. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I had so much fun setting up these spreads for September, which actually really surprised me. But honestly, this is why I keep a bullet journal and do it in a more artsy, maximalist way, because it helps me to be excited for the coming months rather than dreading them because we're going into autumn and winter. Not that you'd think that with the blimmin' heat wave we're currently experiencing, but hey ho. Thank you for watching, friends. If you like this video, please give it a like. It really helps YouTube know to push my videos out to other people. And if you are one of those new people, hi! Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like what we do here, hit that subscribe button so we can hang out some more. And leave me a comment telling me what your favourite root vegetable is. Emojis are more than an acceptable format to answer this question in. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!